What's going on, you guys? Paul here with Paul's Performance, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we have a special one for you guys. Not a good one, a special one. Our cameraman, Samuel, behind the camera, has bought his third bean, and this one come with a broken timing belt. So what we're going to be doing today is trying to figure out what all is damaged. We're going to show you guys what can happen when you break a timing belt on an ALH 1.9 TDI engine, and we're also going to try to figure out what all is wrong with the head on it to see whether or not we can repair the head or whether or not we need a new head to get this car back on the road. Let's get over here to our workbench and see what it looks like. So we have our head right here on our workbench. We're going to start on the bottom side. As you can see from first glance, all the valves are still here, which is a good sign, because for some of you guys it may not be this good looking, unfortunately, because when you break your timing belt, it can do all types of damage, and usually it's worse than what this is. It can break valves. You'll see slam marks or damage to the valves from where they hit the cylinders, which I'm not seeing anything on this side, but on the actual pistons outside you can see a slight mark. You can tell one of these have hit. So the first thing I'm looking for, obviously, is any damage to any of the valves from where they have touched a piston. So I don't see any of that. The second thing is we have our injector tips where they are coming through the head. I'm looking to see if any of those have any flat marks from where they would have gotten hit, which, I mean, like I said, there won't be any damage to this one because there's not a lot of damage for the valve side, because the piston should never hit this tip. But like I said, if one of these valves break, it could damage an injector. So this head actually looks good on this side. So for some of you, you may see, a valve broken or, some metal damage or, bent. And in that case, probably time for a new head. This one is most likely going to get the same outcome. So far, it doesn't look as bad as I thought. What we're going to do is I'm going to zip off the cam and we're going to see what it looks like on the underside. Let me get that off. We got our caps removed. Before you just throw everything around, make sure you keep your caps, in the way that they came off. If you do plan on fixing this head, you want to make sure that you put them back in the exact spot. So anyways, we have our cam here, and the first thing I'm going to do now that we have this removed is I'm going to inspect the cam. Now, I already see some damage, but not to the cam, so I'll show you guys that in a second. But the cam, I don't really see any spots to it, which, like I said, it's a little bit on the tougher side. So basically, guys, once your timing belt breaks, most likely your pistons are going to kiss the valves, and you don't want them to be kissing. So it's not a good kiss. And what happens is the weakest point is what's going to break, most likely, unless you are the luckiest man alive and you somehow break the timing belt at the exact perfect spot to where nothing touches. Unfortunately for this car, it was a manual transmission and it broke at 40 miles per hour, so it did probably a lot of kissing after that. The weakest point is what's going to break. It could be the valve, other parts of the head, it could be, the piston if it really wanted to be. But I think we found the issue for this one. So let me get this cam out of here. Let me clean these off a little bit. It looks like we found our culprits. So if you look at all of these tappets, I don't know if you guys can see, I'll pull one out here in a second. They're in bad shape. Let me pull this one out. So that is bad. That is cracked. You can see where the top of the valve has actually pushed through. This tappet should be perfectly flat with no cracks. Let me find one. This one it has a little bit of damage, but it's a lot better shape. It's flat. You can kind of see the indentation, but it's not bad, and it's nice and flat. Whereas this one right here is absolutely not good. And it looks like it's got just about every single one of them, which I figured because, like I said, he said it broke at 40 miles per hour. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull these out, and then I'm gonna check the top sides of the valves. I'm gonna go out on a limb and see if there's a possibility that the valves are not bent or damaged. and it only messed up these tappets. I doubt it. That one's stuck in there, so that's not good. So yeah, I'm gonna try to get these out. I'm hoping that the actual head is okay. The valve seats might have a chance of being okay, but we'll see. Let me see if I can get these out first. So we have the head kind of tilted up, that way you guys can see the bottom where the valves are. So what I'm gonna do, this is just quick little at home, it's not definitive test, but I like to do it. But basically, if your valve seat is good and your valve is seated properly, it should not leak. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna force some liquid into these ports for each valve. I'm just gonna use a bottle of water. It's what I have laying around. It's not always the best thing to use. These are aluminum heads, so a little bit more forgiving compared to if it was like a cast iron head. Also at the same time, you can pour this in there and just instantly wash it back out. Don't just leave it in there. Or you could use oil. It's gonna come apart anyway, and I'm gonna clean this out right after. And if I pour this in here and the valve is seated properly, in theory, nothing should leak out by this valve down here. So we're gonna go, to each one, fill it up with liquid, and we're gonna come down to the bottom and we're gonna analyze for any sorts of leaks. And if none of them leak, then that's a good sign saying that the valve seats are in good shape and the valves are seated properly enough to continue to run. Not definitive, it's not like a machine shop test. Some of them may do this as an extra, but like I said, it's a good check, because if you do have one that is bad, it's gonna leak the liquid by it. So it will help to find a bad one, but it's not definitive to say that everything is in good shape. So like I said, this is just kind of like a backyard test that I like to do. So we're gonna start pouring them in. We have all of them full, and now we're going to inspect for leaks. So we're looking right here at our first two cylinders, and as you can see, we have no drips, no leaks of any kind yet for these, and the same for these. I'm starting to see a little bit of liquid build up on that exhaust, but I don't see an actual leak yet. And then now we're going to move to the back two cylinders, where I believe we have our first leak. As you can see, we have a drip coming out of this valve right here. This one seems to be okay. Those two seem to be okay, but this one is got a steady drip. It's not saying that all of these other valves are seated perfectly, but they are seated good enough to where they're holding the water from leaking by at this point. On this valve, it looks like I can see some water seeping in, but it has not dripped at all. You don't know that there's any cracks or anything, but it is definitive to tell me that this valve is not properly seated anymore, because we have a steady drip of water coming out of it. There could be damage. It could be badly seated. It could have a bent valve. We don't know until we get this out, but that is a definitive thing saying we do need to take at least this valve out and see what's going on with that. So that's going to be our next step, is getting this one valve out. I'm going to deem the rest as okay. The only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take me a soft like rubber mallet and hit on the top side of these, just to make sure they're still springing loaded and none of them are locked up. And then we're going to remove this valve and see if there's any damage to the valve or the valve seat surface. As I'm going to go down before I remove that valve, and I'm going to make sure that none of these valves are stuck. So I'm going to come from the top side and I'm going to hit them and make sure they have a good spring to them, and they don't go down and get stuck, or they're not a very stuck solidly closed. Use something soft. I'm going to use this little small hammer because the valve is kind of stuck down in there a little bit, and this fits in there, and it's also made out of wood. When I take my hammer and I smack it, this wood won't damage any of the aluminum because it's soft. So I'm going to come down through here and make sure that all of these are working properly and none of them are getting stuck. That one's good. 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 That was good. That was good. All right, so as you can see, none of the valves stuck open, and as far as you seeing them go down or anything, it's kind of hard to see as fast as they are. If you hold the hammer lightly or whatever you're using, when you smack it, if it works and spring loads, the hammer will kind of pop out of your hand a little bit. Whereas, like I said, if it hits solid, you'll just have to have that feel. Anyways, we got that done. So now we're going to remove the valve that is leaking and see why it's leaking. We got our valve springs out, and we got the valve ready to come out of the head. Let's get in here. I'm gonna reach up underneath the head here, and I'm gonna push it out, grab it, and we're gonna pull it out. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to inspect it to see if I see any sort of bend. You may not see a bend, but we'll check it a little bit better once we clean it up. And then I'm also going to inspect our mating surface on the valve to see if there's any damage, and I'm going to say it actually looks really good, but there is quite a bit of soot buildup on it. So let's go to the head here, and I'm gonna clean up. I'm gonna show you guys what it looks like now. So with the valve pulled off, you can see how much gunk was on it. Like I said, I have done nothing but pull the valve out, and if you look on this side, there is quite a bit of soot buildup. So I'm thinking that maybe this one was leaking even before it broke, just a smidge. It's got so much soot buildup, it's then got into the valve seat. So let me wipe that off and see if we can verify that, which would be great if so, because that means we probably don't have any damage to the actual seat itself. Now that I've cleaned it off, you guys can look at it. Like I said, I don't see any damage to it at all. Like I said, I think maybe this one had just lost its seat because of the amount of soot that's in this head. So that's a good sign. I may be able to save this head, but I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull out all of these valves and check all the seats and clean up, get all the soot off of them, clean the valves, reseat them all, and probably get a new cam and lifters, tappets to go in it. And I believe I'm gonna try this head again. Like I said, the car's going on 300,000 miles on the engine, so it's not really worth buying another head for. But I will say, from my mechanic's opinion, if this was a customer coming in and they wanted their car to be fixed for this particular head in general, I would send it to a machine shop and get a machine shop to look it over, make sure there's no cracks, damage, and get a machine shop to either rebuild it, or I would replace the head. For those of you guys who were kind of wondering what all could happen, this is what happens. This is one scenario here. This one is, to be honest, a lot better of a scenario, because I do believe that I may be able to get some more miles out of this head. Half of the time though, you're probably not going to get anywhere near. I wouldn't even call this lucky, because this is still unlucky. 9 times out of 10, I would say you're going to end up with a broken valve, a bent valve, a completely damaged top end. This one is a little bit more on the lucky side comparative to some others, but this is what we would be looking for in the diagnostic of this, and this is one scenario out of the million that could happen. I'm gonna pull out all these valves and check them all. We'll probably end up trying it. We'll probably make another video of us getting this car back running. We're gonna take a chance on it. Like I said, this is more of those why not. If you broke a belt in your car, this is an interference motor, so like I said, it's probably done some damage to it. Unfortunately, it's probably gonna be a pretty hefty bill. Sorry for your loss. So anyways, that's one thing that could happen when your timing belt breaks on ALH. Hope you guys enjoyed this. For those of you guys who have a broken belt, I do apologize. I'm sorry for you. Appreciate you guys watching. Like I said, if you have any other questions about yours, please leave them in the comments. I'll try to get to them as quickly as possible. But as always, please like and subscribe, and see you guys next time.